This video is for you if you have somebody in your life who is experiencing chronic illness. Now, there are very, very many different types of experiences that people with chronic illness can be having. And so what I say may or may not apply to you in your particular situation. But having experienced this over a number of years now with my partner, um, there are some things which really do seem to make a difference. So I'd just like to share a few of them now, really. The first is that we try and work through things together. And what I actually mean by that is that a bit later in the video, I'm going to share this thing which I find really helpful for helping me think through a certain aspect of this experience. But it's not me working something out to do to her. It's very much taking place in terms of discussion. And I think it's really, really important to say this because what we found is that our relationship has actually deepened beyond what we thought was really possible. And part of that has actually been to do with how we've communicated and how we've got to know each other and how we found ways of supporting each other in this experience. So it's kind of like she's not here now, but she is. And very much in terms of thinking about how to be a proper support, this is key. It's not me doing something to her. It's like, how do we make this relationship between us work so that we both feel that we're moving more fully into our fullest expression of ourselves, given the circumstances? So that's kind of lies behind everything else. Because it can be easy to actually get into a habit of, because obviously I do a lot more of certain activities than she can because of the situation. And so it can fall into this pattern if one is not careful. But that attitude seems to keep a level of freshness, which I really wouldn't have thought possible. So on to the main bit. And this is, you may have heard me talk about this before, these three basic principles of something called self-determination theory, which are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Now, very quickly, autonomy is that sense of agency, that sense of I can do, I'm in charge, I'm the one who's really determining my life. The second is competence. Okay, I can do something and I can do it well, which is a very different skill. The third is relatedness, which is connecting to ourselves, connecting to other people, predominantly in that method. So very, very simple. But what the theory has found, and apparently it's very, very well researched, is that if we support those three things, they contribute to mental, physical, emotional well-being across periods of time and across, this is in the research, it is true across time and across cultures. So it's a very simple thing and a very powerful thing. So what does that mean in practice? It means that if we are discussing something to do together, which is impacted by the illness side of things, there is still an opportunity there for autonomy for both of us, for this sense of agency for both of us. It's not me taking care of something, not me feeling like my choices have been taken away. Constantly coming back to this question of how can we feel more of that agency, both of us? How can I relate in a way that creates that feeling in her? I mean, this is also true of any relationship, right? It's the same thing, but particularly in this situation where there is one person who's doing more, one person who's got a situation which is very difficult to deal with, the chronic illness, it's really helpful to keep coming back. What brings me autonomy, more of a sense of that freedom and that sort of being in charge? And what does that for her? How can we organize things? Now, what's useful for this, what this is particularly useful for, rather, and this is also true for the other two, is that with chronic illness, certainly in the situation that my partner is in, her symptoms, energy levels fluctuate. They're never very close to okay. but they can be very, very bad. And so from day to day, or even throughout the day, they can fluctuate. And this is challenging because, may come back and something which was possible earlier, a few weeks ago, isn't possible now. So we have to adapt in some way. We have a plan for the day and suddenly it has to change in light of this fluctuation. So the reason this principle is so useful is that what is the level of autonomy, that sense of freedom or competence or relatedness, which are the other two, that we can actually bring to this particular moment, this particular situation, this particular flavor of how things are at the moment. So that's autonomy. The second is competence. And one of the things which is really challenging being in my role is that I constantly have too much to do. And I constantly feel like I'm not doing things well enough. I don't know if any of you can relate to that, whether you're in the same sort of situation as me or just in normal life. And so what we really want to be doing is reinforcing a sense of competence. And that is done by making what we're doing small enough that we can succeed. So that might be the big task being broken down into lots of little tasks. That might be that what is going to be possible for my energy level today. And of course, this also applies to my partner. So that, okay, so she cannot do X on this particular day, but she could do Y. So I can adapt and I can find out and offer suggestions and possibilities of what that Y could be. Y as in the letter, sort of what that thing could be that she could do, which would actually help her feel that sense of competence. And, in a situation where energy levels, strength, etc., are fluctuating so much, and that today I can't do what I did yesterday, it's important to find ways that a person from mental health, but also for that sense of living, that we're actually living in a meaningful way. So that's the second one, competence, finding ways that I can feel competent in the face of this thing where I very frequently don't, and that she can also feel competent in the face of fluctuations. And the third is relatedness. And one of the real big challenges of chronic illness that we've both experienced is that our world has become very much smaller. We've moved, so our circle was already minimal, but because we can't go out in the same way as perhaps people who aren't living in this situation can, our world is quite small. And so what this actually means in practice for us is that we both do a lot of work on making an effort towards the other, to not just be focusing on the challenge side of things, but actually to really be focusing on the connection that we have together and the quality of time where we can have it, the quality of the time that we spend together. That's absolutely at the top of the list. And I have to say that that is actually not my instigation. That was actually my partner's. She's been amazing at thinking about that and bringing it back. It's not been a strength of mine. And at the same time, I have seen the benefits of it. So this prioritizing of moments, whether big or small, of real connection between us. And then we are looking actively to build out this network because, as apparently the research shows from a huge, I think it's Harvard study, I may have got that wrong, huge, very long-term Harvard study, connections are a very good way to guard against, well, they're a very good way to protect longevity and well-being and all of these sorts of things. So that, I think it's important to say just on the relatedness as well, is that in the times where my partner has been very, very ill, really very, very seriously ill. And in those times where it was almost difficult to communicate, we still made efforts to actually have some connection, even though it was very tiny in a darkened room with very little sound possible, very little movement possible. We would still make those attempts, and they make a difference. So, yeah, I feel sort of just remembering those times. It's very, very difficult in those times. And at the same time, it's something that can be done. We can actually work on the quality of the interaction between us and the quality of the interaction with the people around us. And it does bring a lot of benefit. Now, so just to recap, so it's funny talking about it, just sort of reminds me of some of the more challenging times. And I think the thing I'd like to end with is just like one of the most difficult things about this situation is how invisible it is. And this is true for anybody who's living with any kind of chronic illness, mental health challenge. Uh, Obviously, you can sometimes see what's going on, but people don't see the day-to-day struggle and how much harder everything is. And I think one of the things which I feel very strongly about, which isn't spoken much about, is the strength and the courage of people who are caring for somebody with chronic illness, but above all, the people who have the chronic illness. It is so hard to live day in, day out with a sort of a stress load on health, one's mental resources, day in, day out, to actually be with that grind. So I guess I think the thing I really want to say is just like, I suppose I'm hesitating to say it because it sounds so cheesy, but I kind of see you to the degree that I am able to, because I know I can't fully, but I get it. I get how hard it is. And it's really kind of amazing how you're doing with all of this. Okay, that's it for now. See you next time.